The Time Traveler's Apprentice. Chapter 1. The old grandfather clock in the dusty antique shop chimed midnight as 17-year-old Evelyn Harper stepped through the front door, the bell above it jingling softly. She ran her fingers along the smooth, worn wood of the counter, her gaze sweeping over the various curiosities displayed throughout the shop, ancient leather-bound tomes, delicate porcelain figurines, and a collection of ornate pocket watches. "Hello?" Evelyn called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Finch, are you here?" A rustling sound came from the back room, and a moment later, the shop's elderly owner emerged, his wispy white hair and thick glasses giving him an owlish appearance. "Ah, Evelyn," Mr. Finch exclaimed, a warm smile spreading across his face. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't make it." Evelyn's heart raced with anticipation. "I wouldn't miss it for the world. You said you had something important to show me." Mr. Finch nodded and gestured for her to follow him. "Indeed I do. Come, my dear, but be careful. This is a most precious item." He led her to a glass display case in the far corner of the shop, and Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as her gaze fell upon the object within, a gleaming golden pocket watch, its intricate face adorned with strange symbols. "This," Mr. Finch said solemnly, "is no ordinary timepiece. It is a gateway to the past, a tool that grants its wielder the power to travel through time." Evelyn's eyes widened in disbelief. "Time travel? But how is that possible?" "All in good time, my dear," Mr. Finch replied, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. "For you see, I have chosen you to be my apprentice, the next caretaker of this remarkable device." Evelyn stared at the pocket watch, her mind racing with the implications of what Mr. Finch was telling her. Time travel. The very idea was both exhilarating and terrifying. But as she looked up at the kindly old man, she knew that this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "But I'm honored, Mr. Finch. I'll do my best to be a worthy apprentice." Mr. Finch chuckled and placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "I have no doubt of that, my dear. Now, let us begin your training. The past is calling, and we mustn't keep it waiting." Chapter 2. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn immersed herself in Mr. Finch's teachings, learning the intricacies of the golden pocket watch and the principles of time travel. She marveled at the complex mechanisms within the timepiece, the way the hands moved not just forward, but backward as well. "The key," Mr. Finch explained, "is to focus your mind on the specific date and time you wish to travel to. Visualize it, feel it, and the watch will respond accordingly." Evelyn practiced this technique endlessly, testing the limits of the watch's abilities. She traveled back a day, a week, a month, each journey expanding her understanding of the temporal realm. Mr. Finch watched over her, guiding her, sharing the wisdom he had gained over his many decades as the watch's caretaker. "You must be incredibly careful," he cautioned. "The past is a delicate thing. Even the slightest change can have profound consequences on the future. One wrong move and the very fabric of time could unravel." Evelyn nodded solemnly, the weight of her newfound responsibility settling heavily upon her. "I understand, Mr. Finch. I won't let you down." "I know you won't, my dear," the old man replied, placing a weathered hand on her arm. "You have a good heart and a keen intellect. With time, I believe you will become a true master of the temporal arts." As the weeks turned 2 months, Evelyn's skill and confidence grew. She learned to navigate the past with precision, avoiding any actions that might inadvertently alter the course of history. Mr. Finch marveled at her progress and began to speak of the grand adventures that awaited them. "There are so many wonders to behold, Evelyn," he said wistfully. "Moments in time that have been lost to the ages, waiting to be rediscovered. Imagine the knowledge we could uncover, the mysteries we could solve." Evelyn's heart raced with excitement. "Where will we go first, Mr. Finch?" The old man smiled enigmatically. "That, my dear, is for you to decide. The past is your canvas. All you need to do is choose the brush." Chapter 3. With Mr. Finch's guidance, Evelyn began to plan their first major expedition through time. She pored over history books, mapping out pivotal moments and intriguing eras that she longed to witness firsthand. What about the Renaissance? She suggested one day, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. The flowering of art, science, and philosophy, it must have been an incredible time to behold. Mr. Finch nodded approvingly. An excellent choice, my dear. The Renaissance was a true golden age filled with brilliant minds and groundbreaking discoveries. I believe we could learn a great deal by observing it up close. Evelyn could hardly contain her excitement. When should we go? Where should we start? Patience, Evelyn, the old man chuckled. Time travel is not something to be rushed into lightly. We must plan every detail meticulously, lest we risk disrupting the delicate balance of the past. Over the following weeks, Evelyn and Mr. Finch worked tirelessly to prepare for their journey. They studied maps, pored over historical accounts, and practiced their temporal navigation techniques until Evelyn felt ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. Finally, the day of their departure arrived. Evelyn stood before the gleaming golden pocket watch, her heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. "Are you ready, my dear?" Mr. Finch asked, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Evelyn took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, Mr. Finch, I'm ready." "Then let us be off," the old man exclaimed, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "To the Renaissance we go." With a deft twist of the pocket watch's ornate hands, the world around them began to blur and distort. Evelyn felt a strange tugging sensation, as if the very fabric of reality was stretching and bending to accommodate their temporal leap. And then, in the blink of an eye, they were gone, leaving behind the familiar confines of the antique shop and stepping out into the unknown expanse of the past. Chapter 4. The air was thick with the scent of spices and the chatter of bustling crowds as Evelyn and Mr. Finch emerged from the swirling vortex of time. Ahead of them, the streets of Renaissance Florence teemed with life, merchants hawking their wares, artists painting in the shadows of towering cathedrals, and well-dressed nobility strolling leisurely through the sun-dappled piazzas. Evelyn's eyes widened in awe as she took in the vibrant scene. "We made it," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're really here." Mr. Finch chuckled warmly. "Indeed we are, my dear. Welcome to the height of the Florentine Renaissance, circa 1515. Evelyn's gaze darted from one fascinating detail to the next, her mind racing to process the overwhelming sensory experience. The sights, the sounds, the very air, everything felt so alive, so distinct from the modern world she had left behind. "This is incredible," she murmured, her fingers tightening around the precious pocket watch. "Where should we start?" An excellent question," the old man replied, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "There are so many remarkable individuals and events to witness, it's difficult to know where to begin. However, I think I have the perfect starting point in mind." He gestured towards a grand cathedral in the distance, its ornate facade glittering in the afternoon sun. Santa Maria del Fiore, the magnificent Duomo of Florence. Its construction was overseen by the legendary architect Filippo Brunelleschi, a true visionary who pushed the boundaries of engineering and design. "I believe observing his work would be a most enlightening way to commence our journey." Evelyn nodded eagerly. "Then that's where we'll go. Lead the way, Mr. Finch." The two time travelers set off, weaving through the bustling streets and marveling at the splendor that surrounded them. Evelyn could scarcely believe that she was walking the same paths as the great minds and artists of the Renaissance, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Machiavelli, all within arm's reach, their legacies yet to be cemented in the annals of history. As they approached the Duomo, Evelyn felt a thrill of anticipation. This was only the beginning of their grand adventure through time. Who knew what other wonders and discoveries awaited them? Chapter 5. The Duomo of Florence loomed before them, a towering testament to the ingenuity and ambition of the Renaissance. Evelyn craned her neck, awestruck by the sheer scale and grandeur of the cathedral's iconic dome, designed and constructed under the watchful eye of Filippo Brunelleschi. "It's breathtaking," she murmured, her gaze drawn to the intricate patterns and ornate details that adorned the building's facade. Mr. Finch nodded in agreement, a look of profound reverence on his weathered face. Brunelleschi's achievement here is nothing short of miraculous. At the time, many doubted that such a massive, self-supporting dome could ever be built. But through his unwavering vision and innovative engineering, he proved them all wrong. Evelyn could almost feel the weight of history pressing down upon her as she stood before the Duomo. This was a moment of profound significance, a turning point that had reshaped the very course of Western civilization. "Where do we start?" she asked, her mind buzzing with questions. "Let us begin by observing the construction process itself," Mr. Finch replied, gesturing towards a group of workers toiling away on the cathedral's upper levels. Brunelleschi employed a number of ingenious techniques to bring his ambitious design to life, including the use of innovative hoisting machines and a novel double-shell construction method. Evelyn followed the old man's gaze, watching in fascination as the skilled laborers carefully maneuvered massive blocks of stone and mortar into place. It was a dizzying display of human ingenuity and sheer physical effort, all driven by the vision of a single man. "What else can we learn here?" she asked, eager to soak up every detail. So many things, my dear," Mr. Finch said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "We could study the symbolism and theological significance of the Duomo's intricate decorations, explore the political machinations that shaped its construction, or even delve into the technological breakthroughs that made it possible. The possibilities are endless." Evelyn felt a surge of enthusiasm, her mind racing with the potential discoveries that lay ahead. "Then let's not waste another moment. Where shall we start?" Mr. Finch smiled warmly, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. "Excellent question, Evelyn. Let us begin by observing one of Brunelleschi's most ingenious innovations, the creation of his revolutionary hoisting machines." With that, the two-time travelers stepped forward, ready to immerse themselves in the wonders of the Renaissance. Chapter 6. Evelyn and Mr. Finch made their way through the bustling construction site, carefully navigating the maze of scaffolding and stone blocks as they approached the base of the Duomo's towering walls. "Look there," Mr. Finch said, pointing to a series of massive wooden pulleys and levers protruding from the cathedral's upper levels. "That is one of Brunelleschi's hoisting machines in action." Evelyn watched in fascination as a team of workers labored to lift a massive stone block high into the air, their muscles straining with the tremendous effort. The intricate system of ropes and gears seemed to hum with power, defying the limitations of human strength. "How does it work?" she asked, her brow furrowed in concentration. A most ingenious design, my dear," the old man replied, his eyes twinkling with delight. Brunelleschi recognized that the conventional methods of construction, relying solely on human and animal power, would never be sufficient to raise the colossal stones required for the Duomo's dome. He gestured towards the towering structure, his voice filled with reverence. So he set out to create a revolutionary new system, one that would dramatically increase the lifting capacity while also reducing the manpower required. The key lies in the clever arrangement of pulleys and counterweights, which allows even a single laborer to hoist immense loads with relative ease. Evelyn watched in awe as the workers coordinated their efforts, seamlessly operating the complex machinery. It was a symphony of human ingenuity and brute strength, all in service of a singular, ambitious vision. "Remarkable," she breathed, her mind racing with the implications of Brunelleschi's breakthrough. "This must have been a game-changer for construction at the time." Mr. Finch nodded emphatically. "Indeed it was, my dear. Brunelleschi's hoisting machines were a true revolution, paving the way for the construction of larger, more ambitious structures that were simply impossible with traditional methods." He paused, his gaze focused on the towering dome above them. "And of course, they were instrumental in the successful completion of this very cathedral, a testament to the power of human innovation and determination." Evelyn felt a surge of wonder, her appreciation for the engineering marvels of the Renaissance growing with every passing moment. As she watched the workers carefully maneuver the massive stones into place, she couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale and complexity of the undertaking. I can scarcely imagine the challenges they must have overcome, she murmured, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings on the cathedral's facade. Mr. Finch chuckled warmly. Ah, but that is the true beauty of the Renaissance, Evelyn. It was an era filled with bold dreamers and tireless innovators, individuals who refused to be bound by the limitations of the past and instead sought to push the boundaries of human potential. He gestured grandly towards the Duomo, his voice laden with pride and reverence. And where is that spirit more evident than in this magnificent cathedral, a testament to the boundless creativity and engineering prowess of Filippo Brunelleschi. Evelyn felt a surge of inspiration, her mind brimming with questions and ideas. She knew then that their journey through the Renaissance had only just begun. Chapter 7. As Evelyn and Mr. Finch continued their exploration of the Duomo's construction site, they were struck by the sheer scale and complexity of the undertaking. Everywhere they looked, skilled artisans and laborers were engaged in a symphony of activity, each one playing a vital role in the realization of Brunelleschi's grand vision. The level of coordination required to build something of this magnitude is staggering, Evelyn remarked, her gaze sweeping over the organized chaos unfolding before them. Mr. Finch nodded in agreement, his eyes sparkling with intellectual curiosity. Indeed, my dear. Brunelleschi was not only an ingenious engineer, but also a masterful project manager and logistician. The successful construction of the Duomo's dome required the seamless integration of countless elements, from the sourcing and transportation of raw materials to the training and deployment of specialized craftsmen. Evelyn watched as teams of masons carefully positioned each intricately carved stone, their movements fluid and precise. Nearby, carpenters labored to construct the intricate wooden scaffolding that supported the upper levels of the structure, their tools cutting through the air with practiced efficiency. It's almost like a well-choreographed dance, Evelyn marveled, her admiration for the builders growing with every passing moment. Precisely, Mr. Finch replied, his voice tinged with reverence. Brunelleschi understood that the construction of the Duomo was not simply a matter of technical prowess, but also one of coordinating a vast network of human resources. He had to ensure that every piece of the puzzle fit together flawlessly, with each individual worker contributing their unique skills and expertise to the greater whole. The old man paused, his gaze fixed upon a group of masons carefully lowering a massive stone block into place. And it is this holistic, systems-level approach that truly sets Brunelleschi's work apart. He didn't simply design an innovative architectural marvel, he created a model for large-scale, highly complex project management that would have profound implications for generations to come. Evelyn felt a surge of inspiration, her mind racing with the implications of Brunelleschi's groundbreaking achievements. As she watched the builders at work, she couldn't help but marvel at the intricate web of human effort and coordination that had made the Duomo's construction possible. It's truly humbling, isn't it? She murmured, her fingers tracing the delicate carvings that adorned the cathedral's facade. To witness the culmination of so many people's hard work and dedication. Mr. Finch nodded solemnly. Indeed, my dear. The Duomo stands as a testament to the power of human collaboration and perseverance, a shining example of what can be achieved when we set aside our differences and work towards a common, ambitious goal. He placed a weathered hand on Evelyn's shoulder, his eyes filled with a profound sense of wonder. And to think we are but mere spectators to this incredible moment in history. The true heroes are the men and women whose sweat, toil, and ingenuity have brought this marvel to life. Evelyn felt a surge of reverence and gratitude, her appreciation for the builders and craftsmen of the Renaissance deepening with every passing moment. As she stood in the shadow of the towering Duomo, she knew that their journey through time had only just begun. Chapter 8. As Evelyn and Mr. Finch continued their exploration of the Duomo construction site, they were struck by the sheer scale and complexity of the undertaking. Everywhere they turned, skilled artisans and laborers were engaged in a symphony of activity, each one playing a vital role in the realization of Brunelleschi's grand vision. Evelyn was particularly intrigued by the intricate system of scaffolding that crisscrossed the cathedral's towering walls. Constructed entirely of wood, the lattice of beams and platforms stretched up to dizzying heights, providing a sturdy framework for the masons and carvers to work upon. How do they even build something like this? She asked, her eyes tracing the dizzying web of supports. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Ah, my dear, it is a testament to the ingenuity of Brunelleschi and his team. You see, they recognized that conventional scaffolding techniques would simply not suffice for a structure of this magnitude." He gestured towards the towering walls, his voice brimming with admiration. So they developed an entirely new approach, one that relied on a series of interlocking, self-supporting platforms that could be assembled and disassembled with remarkable efficiency. Evelyn followed his gaze, marveling at the intricate web of wooden beams and planks. But how do they ensure the stability and safety of such a monumental structure? "Ah, therein lies the true brilliance of Brunelleschi's design," Mr. Finch replied, his tone laced with reverence. You see, he understood that the key to building at this scale was not just in the individual components, but in the way they were integrated and reinforced. The old man gestured towards a group of workers carefully maneuvering a massive stone block into place, their movements coordinated with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The scaffolding is designed to distribute the immense weight of the cathedral's materials across a vast network of supports, with each element working in concert to maintain the overall structural integrity. Evelyn watched, transfixed, as the workers carefully guided the stone into its intended position, their faces etched with concentration. And the beauty of it all, Mr. Finch continued, is that this scaffolding system can be adapted and reconfigured as the construction progresses, allowing the builders to access even the most challenging areas of the cathedral with ease. Evelyn felt a profound sense of admiration for the ingenuity and foresight of Brunelleschi and his team. As she observed the intricate dance of human effort and engineering, she couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the undertaking. "It's truly astonishing," she murmured, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings that adorned the cathedral's facade. "To think that all of this was conceived and built by the human mind and hand." Mr. Finch nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a deep sense of reverence. "Indeed, my dear, the Duomo stands as a testament to the limitless potential of the human spirit, a monument to the power of innovation, collaboration, and unwavering determination." Evelyn felt a surge of inspiration, her own ambitions and dreams taking on a new, grander scale. As she stood in the shadow of the towering cathedral, she knew that their journey through the Renaissance had only just begun. Chapter 9. As Evelyn and Mr. Finch continued their exploration of the Duomo construction site, they were struck by the sheer scope and complexity of the project. Everywhere they turned, they witnessed a symphony of activity, with skilled artisans and laborers working in perfect harmony to bring Brunelleschi's grand vision to life. One of the most fascinating aspects of the construction, Evelyn noted, was the intricate system of pulley-driven cranes that dotted the landscape. These towering wooden structures, with their elaborate networks of ropes and winches, seemed to defy the limits of human engineering. How on earth do they manage to lift such massive stones and materials to such dizzying heights? She marveled, watching in awe as a team of workers carefully hoisted a massive block of marble into place. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes sparkling with intellectual curiosity. "Ah, my dear, the genius of Brunelleschi's design lies not only in the architecture of the Duomo itself, but also in the ingenious machinery he has devised to facilitate its construction." The old man gestured towards the nearest crane, its towering wooden frame reaching up towards the cathedral's soaring walls. "You see, these cranes are marvels of Renaissance engineering, employing a system of counterweights and pulleys that allows them to lift and maneuver even the heaviest of materials with remarkable ease and precision." Evelyn studied the crane, her mind racing as she tried to comprehend the intricate mechanics at work. But how do they ensure the stability and safety of these towering structures? She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Mr. Finch's expression grew more serious as he considered her question. Yes, that is a critical concern, my dear. Brunelleschi and his team have had to develop innovative solutions to address the challenges posed by these massive cranes. He gestured towards the base of the crane, where a series of large stone blocks were carefully secured. You see, the key lies in the careful distribution of weight and counterbalance. Each crane is anchored to the ground by a sturdy foundation of stone, which serves to stabilize the structure and prevent it from toppling under the immense loads it must bear. Evelyn nodded, her eyes widening with understanding. And I imagine the ropes and pulleys play a critical role as well, distributing the forces evenly across the entire system. Precisely, Mr. Finch exclaimed, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. Brunelleschi's genius lies in his ability to integrate these various elements, the materials, the mechanics, the human labor, into a cohesive, highly effective system for constructing this architectural masterpiece. As Evelyn watched the team of workers expertly manipulate the crane, she marveled at the sheer level of coordination and expertise required to keep such a complex machine operating smoothly. It's truly awe-inspiring, she murmured, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings that adorned the crane's wooden frame. To think that all of this was conceived and built by the human mind and hand. Mr. Finch nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a deep sense of reverence. Indeed, my dear. The Duomo, with its towering cranes and innovative construction techniques, stands as a testament to the limitless potential of the human spirit, a monument to the power of innovation, collaboration, and unwavering determination. Evelyn felt a surge of inspiration, her own ambitions and dreams taking on a new, grander scale. As she stood in the shadow of the Duomo, she knew that their journey through the Renaissance had only just begun. Chapter 10. As the sun began to set over the bustling construction site of the Duomo, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves drawn to a quieter corner where a group of skilled artisans were hard at work on the cathedral's intricate marble carvings. Evelyn watched, transfixed, as the chisels danced across the stone, each skilled stroke shaping the raw material into a thing of breathtaking beauty. The air was filled with the rhythmic sound of mallet against chisel, punctuated by the occasional grunt of effort from the carvers. It's amazing to think that these sculptures and ornamentations will one day adorn the walls of the Duomo, Evelyn murmured, her eyes tracing the graceful curves and intricate details that were slowly emerging from the blocks of marble. Mr. Finch nodded, his expression one of profound reverence. Indeed, my dear. The masters who work here are true artists, imbuing even the most utilitarian elements of the cathedral's design with a sense of the divine. He gestured towards a particularly intricate carving, depicting a scene from the Bible. You see, each of these carved panels, each delicately rendered figure, is not merely a decorative flourish. Rather, they are intended to inspire awe and wonder, to draw the eye of the faithful upward towards the heavens. Evelyn leaned in closer, her fingers tracing the delicate features of the carved figures. It's as if the stone has been imbued with life, each expression and gesture brimming with emotion and meaning. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. But that is the true power of the artist's craft, my dear. For in the hands of a true master, even the most unyielding of materials can be transformed into a vessel for the human spirit. He gestured towards the group of carvers, each one focused intently on their work. You see, it is not merely skill and technique that sets these men apart, but a deep understanding of the divine, an innate ability to translate the mysteries of the universe into tangible form. Evelyn watched, enraptured, as one of the carvers carefully removed a delicate chip of marble, his movements fluid and precise. It's extraordinary, she breathed, to think that each of these carvings represents countless hours of painstaking labor and unwavering dedication. Mr. Finch nodded solemnly. Indeed, my dear. The Duomo, with its soaring architecture and intricate ornamentation, is a testament to the sheer power of human creativity and perseverance. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the construction site, taking in the symphony of activity. But it is not just the carvers who contribute to this grand vision, he continued, his voice tinged with wonder. Every worker here, from the masons to the engineers, plays a vital role in the realization of Brunelleschi's masterpiece. Evelyn felt a surge of inspiration, her own ambitions and dreams taking on a new, grander scale. As she stood in the shadow of the Duomo, she knew that their journey through the Renaissance had only just begun. Chapter 11. As the sun continued to set over the bustling construction site of the Duomo, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves drawn to a secluded courtyard where a group of scholars and intellectuals had gathered to engage in a lively debate. Evelyn listened, rapt, as the men traded passionate arguments, their voices rising and falling with the rhythms of their discourse. The topics ranged from the philosophical underpinnings of the Renaissance to the latest advancements in the fields of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. It's remarkable to witness the exchange of ideas taking place here, Evelyn murmured to Mr. Finch, her eyes alight with curiosity. These men seem to be pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, challenging one another to delve ever deeper into the mysteries of the world around us. Mr. Finch nodded, his expression thoughtful. Indeed, my dear. This is where the true power of the Renaissance lies, not just in the grand architectural achievements, but in the intellectual ferment that is transforming our understanding of the universe. He gestured towards the group of scholars, their hands gesturing emphatically as they debated the merits of various theories. You see, these are the visionaries, the pioneers who are shaping the course of human civilization. Their ideas, their discoveries, will echo through the ages, forever altering the way we perceive the world and our place within it. Evelyn listened, her mind racing as she tried to comprehend the magnitude of what was unfolding before her. It's humbling, in a way, to realize the sheer scope of human potential when it is unleashed in this manner. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Ah, but that is the true beauty of the Renaissance, my dear. It is a time of unbridled curiosity, a period in which the very foundations of our understanding are being challenged and reshaped. He gestured towards the Duomo, its towering walls rising majestically against the evening sky. Just as the architects and artisans of the Duomo are pushing the limits of human engineering and craftsmanship, so too are these scholars and thinkers expanding the boundaries of our intellectual and cultural horizons. Evelyn felt a surge of excitement, her own ambitions and dreams taking on a new, grander scale. As she listened to the scholars debating the merits of Copernicus' revolutionary new theory of the solar system, she knew that their journey through the Renaissance had only just begun. It's breathtaking, the sheer scope of what is unfolding here, she murmured, her gaze sweeping across the courtyard. To think that we stand at the cusp of such momentous change, poised to witness the birth of a new era of human understanding. Mr. Finch nodded, his expression solemn. Indeed, my dear. The Renaissance is a time of profound transformation, a period in which the very foundations of our world are being remade. And we, in our own small way, have the privilege of bearing witness to this extraordinary moment in history. Evelyn felt a thrill of anticipation course through her, and she knew that the adventures that lay ahead would be unlike any she had ever imagined. Chapter 12. As the evening shadows lengthened across the Piazza del Duomo, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves drawn to a small, unassuming building tucked away in a quiet corner of the square. The air was thick with the scent of freshly ground spices and the sizzle of meats cooking over an open flame, and the sounds of laughter and conversation spilled out into the street. This is the Osteria del Drago, Mr. Finch explained, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. A favorite haunt of the Florentine intelligentsia where scholars, artists, and craftsmen come to nourish both body and mind. Evelyn's eyes widened with curiosity as they stepped through the doorway, her senses immediately assaulted by the vibrant sights and sounds of the bustling tavern. Clusters of men, some in plain artisan's garb and others in the finery of the nobility, were gathered around long wooden tables, their voices rising and falling in lively conversation. "Look there," Mr. Finch murmured, gesturing towards a far corner of the room. "That's Michelangelo, deep in discussion with his contemporaries." And over in that alcove, I believe I spy Machiavelli holding court as he expounds on the nature of power and statcraft. Evelyn's heart quickened as she took in the scene, her mind racing with the possibilities. It's remarkable to think that we're surrounded by such luminaries of the Renaissance, all gathered in this humble osteria, trading ideas and debating the issues of the day. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Indeed, my dear. This is where the true spirit of the age is distilled, a place where the brightest minds of our time come to nourish both their bodies and their souls. He led Evelyn to a small table in the corner where a server quickly materialized with a tray of steaming dishes and a jug of robust ruby red wine. "Ah, the famous Florentine stew," Mr. Finch remarked, his eyes gleaming with anticipation as he ladled the fragrant concoction into 2 bowls. The perfect fuel for the intellectuals and artisans who are shaping the course of our civilization. Evelyn took a tentative sip, the flavors bursting on her tongue in a symphony of spices and tender meat. As she savored the meal, her gaze drifted around the room, drinking in the sights and sounds of this vibrant hub of Renaissance culture. "It's intoxicating, isn't it?" Mr. Finch murmured, his own attention seemingly focused on the rich, earthy flavors of the stew. This place, this moment in time, it's as if the very air is charged with the energy of transformation. Evelyn nodded, a sense of awe and wonder washing over her. "I feel as if I'm on the cusp of something extraordinary, Mr. Finch. As if the future itself is unfolding before my eyes." He smiled, his expression warm and reassuring. "Then embrace it, my dear. For the Renaissance is a time of unbridled potential, a period in which the very limits of human achievement are being pushed aside in favor of a bold, new vision for the world." Evelyn's heart soared with a sense of purpose and excitement, and she knew that the adventure that lay ahead would be unlike any she had ever imagined. Chapter 13. As the evening wore on, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves drawn deeper into the lively discourse unfolding within the Osteria del Drago. They were soon engaged in animated conversations with scholars, artists, and craftsmen, each offering a unique perspective on the transformative forces shaping the Renaissance. Evelyn listened with rapt attention as a renowned mathematician expounded on the groundbreaking work of Fibonacci, whose numerical sequence was revolutionizing the study of mathematics and architecture. She found herself captivated by the passionate debates surrounding Copernicus' radical new theory of a sun-centered solar system, which challenged the long-held beliefs of the Ptolemaic model. It's astounding to witness the sheer breadth of intellectual inquiry taking place here, Evelyn murmured to Mr. Finch, her eyes shining with excitement. These men are not content to simply accept the world as it is. They are driven to uncover the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface. Mr. Finch nodded, a warm smile spreading across his features. "Indeed, my dear. The Renaissance is a time of unbridled curiosity, a period in which the very foundations of our understanding are being challenged and reshaped." He gestured towards a group of artisans gathered in a corner, their hands moving deftly as they crafted intricate metal works. "Look there, the engineers and craftsmen, pushing the limits of what is possible with their tools and their ingenuity. They are not merely producing objects of beauty, but rather imbuing them with a sense of purpose and function that is forever altering the way we interact with the world around us." Evelyn's gaze followed his gesture, her eyes widening with awe as she watched the artisans at work. It's as if they are breathing life into the very materials they touch, transforming them into something truly magnificent. Mr. Finch chuckled, taking a sip of his wine. "Indeed, my dear. The Renaissance is a symphony of ideas, a harmonious convergence of the intellectual, the artistic, and the practical, all working in tandem to shape the future of our civilization." Evelyn found herself captivated by the energy and vibrancy of the Osteria del Drago, her mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. As she listened to the lively debates and discussions unfolding around her, she felt a sense of purpose and excitement that she had never known before. "It's as if the very air is charged with the electricity of discovery and innovation," she murmured, her gaze sweeping across the room. I can't help but wonder what incredible feats of human ingenuity and creativity we might witness in the days and years to come." Mr. Finch nodded, his expression reflecting the same sense of awe and wonder. "The Renaissance is a remarkable time, Evelyn, filled with boundless potential. And we, in our own small way, have the privilege of being part of this extraordinary chapter in human history." As the night wore on, Evelyn found herself lost in the captivating world of the Osteria del Drago, her heart and mind brimming with the endless possibilities that the Renaissance had to offer. Chapter 14. As the evening drew to a close, Evelyn and Mr. Finch reluctantly bid farewell to the vibrant world of the Osteria del Drago, their minds still buzzing with the intellectual and artistic ferment they had witnessed. "I feel as if I've had a glimpse into the very heart of the Renaissance," Evelyn mused, her steps light and her spirits high as they made their way back through the now deserted Piazza del Duomo. Mr. Finch nodded, a contemplative expression on his face. "Indeed, my dear. The Osteria del Drago is a microcosm of the remarkable transformation that is sweeping across Florence and the rest of Italy. It is a testament to the boundless curiosity and creativity that define this era." Evelyn's gaze was drawn upwards to the majestic dome of the Duomo, which seemed to glow with an ethereal light in the fading twilight. It's astonishing to think that this magnificent cathedral, a testament to the architectural and engineering prowess of the Renaissance, was conceived and constructed within our own lifetimes, she murmured, awe and reverence evident in her voice. "Truly remarkable," Mr. Finch agreed, his eyes following Evelyn's gaze. "The vision and ambition of the men who brought this masterpiece to life is a testament to the boundless potential of the human spirit." As they continued their walk, Evelyn couldn't help but reflect on the profound sense of possibility that seemed to permeate every aspect of the Renaissance. She thought of the scholars and artists she had encountered, each driven by a relentless pursuit of knowledge and a desire to push the boundaries of human achievement. "It's as if the very fabric of our world is being rewoven, thread by thread, into something entirely new and extraordinary," she mused, her voice tinged with wonder. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Indeed, my dear. The Renaissance is a time of unprecedented transformation, a period in which the old order is being swept aside to make way for a bold new vision of the future." He paused, his expression turning pensive. "And yet, with such profound change comes uncertainty and upheaval. Not everyone will embrace this new era with open arms, for the path ahead is far from clear." Evelyn nodded, a hint of concern clouding her features. "You speak true, Mr. Finch. There will undoubtedly be those who cling to the familiar, who fear the unsettling winds of progress that are sweeping across the land. But it is our responsibility," Mr. Finch continued, his voice firm and resolute, "to not only bear witness to this remarkable moment in history, but to actively shape its course, to champion the ideals of reason, creativity, and human potential that define the Renaissance spirit." Evelyn felt a surge of determination, her doubts and worries momentarily swept aside by a renewed sense of purpose. "Then that is exactly what we shall do, Mr. Finch," she declared, her steps quickening as they approached their lodgings. "We shall embrace the challenges that lie ahead and play our own small part in ushering in a new era of enlightenment and progress." As they stepped through the doorway, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and trepidation, for the future that awaited them was one of uncharted waters and boundless possibility. Chapter 15. The following morning, Evelyn and Mr. Finch set out to explore the bustling streets of Florence, eager to immerse themselves further in the vibrant tapestry of the Renaissance. Their first stop was the Basilica di Santa Croce, a magnificent Gothic cathedral that stood as a testament to the city's enduring devotion to the arts and to the Catholic faith. As they stepped through the towering bronze doors, Evelyn was immediately struck by the soaring architecture with its intricate vaulted ceilings and kaleidoscopic stained glass windows. The air was heavy with the scent of incense and the echoes of a choir's lilting hymns, creating a profound sense of reverence and contemplation. It's as if the very walls of this cathedral are imbued with the accumulated wisdom and spirituality of generations, Evelyn murmured, her gaze sweeping across the ornate chapels and elaborate frescoes that adorned the interior. Mr. Finch nodded, his eyes alight with appreciation. Indeed, my dear. The Basilica di Santa Croce is not merely a place of worship, but a tapestry of the human spirit, a canvas upon which the talents of the greatest artists, architects, and thinkers of the age have been woven. As they made their way through the cathedral, Evelyn was captivated by the burial monuments that lined the walls, each one a testament to the remarkable individuals who had shaped the course of Florence's history. She was particularly drawn to the tomb of the renowned scientist and philosopher Galileo Galilei, who had recently been laid to rest within these hallowed halls after a lifetime of groundbreaking discoveries and fierce intellectual battles. It's humbling to stand in the presence of such greatness, Evelyn mused, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings that adorn. These men, through the sheer force of their intellect and determination, have left an indelible mark upon our world. Mr. Finch's expression grew somber, a deep respect and admiration etched upon his features. Indeed, Evelyn. And yet, the path to such greatness is often paved with struggle and adversity. Galileo's final years were marked by persecution and exile, a consequence of his unwavering commitment to the pursuit of truth. Evelyn nodded, her brow furrowing with concern. It's a sobering reminder that even in this age of enlightenment, there are those who cling to the old ways, who fear the power of new ideas and the threat they pose to the established order. But it is precisely because of this, Mr. Finch declared, his voice tinged with resolve, that we must continue to champion the ideals of the Renaissance, to embrace the boundless potential of the human mind, and to relentlessly seek out the truths that lie hidden beneath the surface of our world. Evelyn's eyes shone with a newfound sense of purpose, and as they turned to leave the basilica, she felt a renewed determination to play her own part in shaping the course of this remarkable era. Chapter 16. As Evelyn and Mr. Finch continued their exploration of Florence, they found themselves drawn to the bustling Piazza della Signoria, the heart of the city's political and cultural life. The vast square was a veritable open-air museum, adorned with towering sculptures and the imposing Palazzo Vecchio, the seat of the Florentine government. Evelyn's gaze was immediately drawn to the magnificent bronze statue of Perseus, its triumphant pose and gleaming features a testament to the artistic genius of Benvenuto Cellini. "It's extraordinary," she murmured, her eyes tracing the intricate details of the masterpiece. "The way the sculptor has captured the power and dynamism of the moment. It's as if the figure might spring to life at any moment." Mr. Finch nodded in agreement, his own admiration evident. Cellini's Perseus is a true embodiment of the Renaissance spirit, a celebration of the human form, the triumph of reason over darkness, and the boundless potential of the artistic imagination. As they moved through the bustling piazza, Evelyn was struck by the sheer energy and diversity of the crowd. Artists and artisans mingled with scholars and statesmen, all drawn to this vibrant center of intellectual and creative exchange. "It's as if the very heart of Florence beats in this place," Evelyn remarked, her gaze sweeping across the scene. The pulse of the city, the rhythm of its dreams and aspirations, all converging in this remarkable square. Mr. Finch chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Indeed, my dear. The Piazza della Signoria is a microcosm of the Renaissance itself, a place where the old and the new, the sacred and the profane, the practical and the visionary, all find a common ground." Evelyn's attention was suddenly drawn to a commotion near the Palazzo Vecchio, where a group of citizens had gathered, their voices raised in heated debate. Curiosity piqued, she turned to Mr. Finch, her brow furrowed with concern. "What do you suppose could be the cause of such agitation?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the gathering crowd. Mr. Finch's expression grew somber, a shadow passing across his features. "Ah, my dear, it would seem that even in this golden age of enlightenment, the forces of traditionalism and intolerance still hold sway." He paused, his voice lowering to a grave tone. I fear that the very ideals we have come to cherish, the pursuit of knowledge, the celebration of creativity, the belief in human potential, are now under threat from those who would seek to stifle progress and maintain the status quo. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine, the exhilaration of the morning now tinged with a sense of unease. But surely, she protested, the citizens of Florence, with their renowned passion for learning and the arts, would not succumb to such narrow-mindedness. Mr. Finch's expression was grave, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. Alas, my dear, the path of progress is rarely smooth or uncontested. Even in this, the most enlightened of cities, there are those who would seek to extinguish the flames of innovation and free inquiry. Evelyn's heart sank, her initial sense of wonder and excitement now tempered by a growing awareness of the challenges that lay ahead. As they turned to leave the bustling piazza, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held for this remarkable city and for the grand vision of the Renaissance itself. Chapter 17. As Evelyn and Mr. Finch made their way back to their lodgings, the weight of their earlier conversation hung heavy in the air. The vibrant energy and optimism of the Piazza della Signoria had given way to a sense of unease as the realization dawned that even in this bastion of enlightenment, the forces of tradition and intolerance still wielded. Evelyn's mind raced, her thoughts filled with questions and concerns. "Mr. Finch," she began, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "What do you make of the conflict we witnessed in the square? What could it mean for the future of Florence and the Renaissance?" Mr. Finch sighed, the lines of his face etched with a profound weariness. "Ah, my dear, it is a question that has vexed the greatest thinkers of our age. The Renaissance, for all its triumphs, has not been without its challenges, and the battle between progress and tradition is one that is being waged in every corner of our world." He paused, his gaze distant, as if he were contemplating the complexities of the situation. "You see, the very ideals that have fueled the Renaissance, the embrace of reason, the pursuit of knowledge, the celebration of individual expression, have also threatened the established order. There are those who cling to the old ways, who fear the power of these new ideas to upend the social, political, and religious structures that have long held sway." Evelyn nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. But surely the citizens of Florence, with their renowned intellectual curiosity and artistic spirit, would not succumb to such reactionary forces. Mr. Finch's expression grew grave. "Alas, my dear, even the most enlightened of cities are not immune to the pull of dogmatism and intolerance. The very passion that has driven the Florentine people to such remarkable achievements can also be a source of division and conflict." He paused, his gaze searching Evelyn's face. "You see, the Renaissance is not merely a triumph of the human spirit. It is also a battlefield where the forces of progress and tradition are locked in an eternal struggle. And the outcome of that struggle, the fate of this golden age, will be determined not by the grand gestures of the powerful, but by the choices and actions of ordinary citizens like ourselves." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine as the gravity of Mr. Finch's words sank in. "Then what is to be done?" she asked, her voice tinged with a newfound sense of purpose. "How can we, as individuals, hope to make a difference in the face of such formidable opposition?" Mr. Finch's eyes gleamed with a spark of determination. "Ah, my dear, that is the very question that has occupied the minds of the greatest thinkers and visionaries of our time. And the answer, I believe, lies in the power of the human spirit, in our ability to transcend the boundaries of our own circumstances and to embrace the boundless potential that lies within us all." He paused, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "For it is not through grand gestures or sweeping declarations that the future of the Renaissance will be forged, but through the quiet, persistent acts of courage, compassion, and unwavering dedication to the pursuit of truth and understanding." Evelyn felt a surge of resolve coursing through her veins as Mr. Finch's words resonated within her. "Then that is the path we must follow," she declared, her voice filled with a newfound determination. "To stand as beacons of enlightenment, to champion the ideals of the Renaissance, and to never surrender in the face of adversity. Mr. Finch's lips curled into a warm smile, and he placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "Indeed, my dear. And in doing so, we may just leave an indelible mark upon the course of human history." With renewed vigor, they continued their journey, their steps guided by the vision of a future where the light of the Renaissance would continue to burn ever brighter despite the forces that sought to extinguish it. Chapter 18. As the days passed, Evelyn and Mr. Finch immersed themselves deeper into the vibrant cultural tapestry of Florence, exploring the city's renowned museums, libraries, and artisan workshops. Yet, despite the city's outward appearance of grandeur and prosperity, a restless undercurrent of tension seemed to permeate the air, hinting at the simmering conflicts that lay beneath the surface. One afternoon, as they strolled through the serene Balboli Gardens, Evelyn found herself drawn to a group of scholars engaged in a heated debate, their voices rising and falling in passionate discourse. "Forgive me," she interjected, her curiosity piqued, "but I couldn't help overhearing your discussion. Might I inquire as to the nature of your debate?" The scholars turned to her, their expressions a mix of surprise and intrigue. "My dear lady," one of them began, his brow furrowed with concern, "we were discussing the growing influence of the Medici family and the threat it poses to the enduring values of the Florentine Republic." Evelyn's eyes widened, her mind racing to comprehend the implications of his words. The Medici? Surely they are the very embodiment of the Renaissance ideals, patrons of the arts, champions of learning, and guardians of Florentine prosperity. The scholar shook his head, his features etched with a sense of foreboding. That may have been true in the past, but the family's ambitions have grown ever more insatiable. They seek to consolidate their power, to transform Florence into their personal fiefdom, and to subjugate the very institutions that have fostered the city's remarkable achievements. Evelyn turned to Mr. Finch, her expression filled with a mixture of confusion and trepidation. "But how can this be? The Medici have long been the driving force behind the city's cultural and intellectual renaissance. How could they now threaten the very ideals they have championed?" Mr. Finch's gaze was pensive, his brow furrowed with concern. My dear, it is a tale as old as time, the corrupting influence of power and the temptation to wield it for one's own ends rather than for the greater good of the community." He paused, his eyes reflecting the weight of his words. "You see, the very wealth and influence that have enabled the Medici to become the patrons of the arts and the champions of learning have also given them the means to amass an ever greater share of power and control over the city's political and social institutions." Evelyn's heart sank as the gravity of the situation became clear. "Then what is to be done? Surely the people of Florence will not stand idly by as their hard-won freedoms are eroded." The scholar's expression grew grim. "Indeed, my lady, there are those among us who have taken up the mantle of resistance, scholars, artisans, and citizens who recognize the threat posed by the Medici's ambitions. But the task is a daunting one, for the family wields considerable influence and resources, and they are not afraid to use them to silence their opponents." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine, the weight of the scholar's words settling heavily upon her. She turned to Mr. Finch, her eyes reflecting a newfound sense of purpose. "Then it is our duty to lend our voices to this cause, to stand alongside the defenders of Florentine liberty, and to fight for the preservation of the ideals that have made this city the shining beacon of the Renaissance." Mr. Finch's lips curled into a proud smile, and he placed a reassuring hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "Well said, my dear. For it is in moments like these, when the very foundations of our cherished beliefs are threatened, that we must summon the courage to defend them, to be the guardians of the light that has illuminated the path of human progress." With renewed determination, they bade farewell to the scholars and continued their journey, their steps guided by the vision of a Florence that would remain true to the ideals of the Renaissance, even in the face of the most daunting of challenges. Chapter 19. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the city, Evelyn and Mr. Finch made their way back to their lodgings, their minds abuzz with the implications of the scholar's impassioned discourse. The Medici family vying for absolute control over Florence. Evelyn murmured, her brow furrowed with concern. It's a sobering thought, and yet I cannot help but feel a sense of determination to see this challenge through. Mr. Finch nodded thoughtfully, his gaze reflecting the gravity of the situation. Indeed, my dear. The Medici have long been the pillars of the Florentine Renaissance, but power can be a corrupting force, even for the most noble of families. He paused, his expression contemplative. We must tread carefully, for the path ahead is fraught with danger. The Medici wield immense influence, and they will not relinquish their hold on the city without a fierce struggle. Evelyn's eyes narrowed with determination. Then we must join the ranks of those who seek to preserve the Florentine Republic and its cherished ideals. Surely there are others who recognize the threat posed by the Medici's ambitions. Undoubtedly, Mr. Finch replied, his voice steady and resolute. But we must be cautious in our approach. The Medici have eyes and ears throughout the city, and they will not hesitate to silence those who dare to challenge their authority. As they ascended the steps to their lodgings, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose. Then we must be strategic, Mr. Finch. We shall gather information, forge alliances, and find ways to support the efforts of those who stand against the Medici's encroaching influence. Mr. Finch's lips curled into a reassuring smile. Spoken like a true champion of the Florentine cause, my dear. And rest assured, I shall stand by your side, for the preservation of the city's hard-won freedoms is a battle worth fighting. Together, they entered their quarters, their minds already racing with possibilities and strategies, determined to play their part in the unfolding struggle for the soul of Florence. Chapter 20. In the days that followed, Evelyn and Mr. Finch immersed themselves in the intricate web of Florentine politics, cautiously navigating the delicate alliances and rivalries that underscored the ongoing power struggle. It's a dizzying dance, is it not? Mr. Finch remarked one evening as they pored over the latest reports and rumors from their network of informants. The Medici family wields such sway, yet there are those who refuse to be cowed by their influence. Evelyn nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. Indeed, we have heard whispers of a growing resistance movement led by scholars, artisans, and even some disgruntled members of the nobility who fear the Medici's ambitions. She paused, her gaze fixed on the parchment before her. The challenge lies in finding a way to lend our support without drawing the ire of the Medici and their allies. One misstep could prove disastrous. Mr. Finch's expression was pensive. Caution is certainly warranted, my dear, but we cannot allow fear to paralyze us. The future of the Florentine Republic hangs in the balance, and we must do all in our power to ensure its survival. Evelyn's eyes narrowed with determination. Then we shall tread carefully, but we shall not be deterred. We shall seek out the leaders of the resistance movement, forge alliances, and provide what aid we can without drawing undue attention to ourselves. With renewed vigor, they set to work, meticulously gathering intelligence, forging connections, and identifying ways to support the burgeoning resistance. As the days passed, they found themselves immersed in a complex web of intrigue, their every step fraught with the potential for discovery and retribution. Yet, in the face of these challenges, Evelyn and Mr. Finch remained steadfast, driven by a shared vision of a Florence that would remain true to the ideals of the Renaissance, a beacon of cultural, intellectual, and political freedom in a world increasingly beset by the forces of tyranny and oppression. Chapter 21. As the weeks turned 2 months, Evelyn and Mr. Finch's involvement in the Florentine resistance movement deepened, their roles evolving from cautious observers to trusted confidants and strategic advisors. The situation grows more perilous by the day, Mr. Finch murmured one evening, his brow furrowed with concern. The Medici's grip on the city tightens, and their agents have grown increasingly bold in their attempts to root out the opposition. Evelyn nodded solemnly, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns on the parchment before her. I fear you are right, Mr. Finch. Our allies within the resistance have reported a series of arrests and disappearances, all targeting the most vocal critics of the Medici regime. She paused, her gaze meeting his with unwavering determination. Yet, we cannot afford to be cowed by their intimidation tactics. The future of the Florentine Republic hangs in the balance, and we must continue to support the resistance no matter the cost. Mr. Finch's expression was grave, but his voice rang with resolve. You speak true, my dear. We have come too far to turn back now. Our course is set, and we must see it through, whatever challenges may lie ahead. Together, they pored over the latest intelligence, formulating strategies to aid the resistance while minimizing the risk of detection and retaliation. Evelyn's sharp mind and Mr. Finch's diplomatic acumen proved invaluable as they navigated the treacherous waters of Florentine politics. Yet, as the pressure mounted and the stakes grew ever higher, they found themselves confronted with a sobering reality. The Medici's stranglehold on the city was tightening, and the path to victory grew ever more perilous. We must be prepared for the worst, Mr. Finch, Evelyn murmured, her eyes reflecting the weight of their undertaking. The Medici will not surrender their power without a fight, and we may be forced to make difficult choices in the days to come. Mr. Finch's hand found hers, his gaze steady and resolute. Whatever lies ahead, we shall face it together, my dear. For the sake of Florence and the ideals we hold dear, we must persevere. With a shared nod of determination, they turned their attention back to the task at hand, their resolve strengthened by the knowledge that the fate of the Florentine Republic rested upon their actions. Chapter 22. As the tension in Florence reached a fever pitch, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves at the heart of a desperate race against time, their every move fraught with the threat of discovery and retribution. The Medici's spies are closing in, Mr. Finch murmured, his brow furrowed with concern. We must act quickly if we are to provide our allies with the crucial support they need. Evelyn's gaze was steely, her mind racing with options and contingencies. Then we must move swiftly, but with the utmost caution. One misstep could jeopardize everything we have worked to achieve. Together, they orchestrated a daring plan to deliver vital supplies and information to the resistance, utilizing a network of trusted contacts and clandestine routes through the city's winding streets. As they made their way through the shadows, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The city feels like a powder keg, ready to ignite at the slightest provocation. We must be prepared for the worst, Mr. Finch. Her companion's expression was grave, but his voice remained steady. Indeed, my dear, but we cannot allow fear to paralyze us. The future of Florence hangs in the balance, and we must do all in our power to tip the scales in favor of the resistance. They pressed on, their hearts racing with the thrill of their mission and the weight of its consequences. Time and again, they narrowly avoided detection, their nerves frayed by the constant threat of discovery. Finally, as they reached the rendezvous point, they were greeted by the relieved faces of their allies, their eyes shining with gratitude and determination. Your timely arrival may have saved us, one of the resistance leaders whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The Medici's forces are closing in, and we fear the worst is yet to come. Evelyn and Mr. Finch exchanged a solemn glance, their unspoken fears weighing heavily upon them. Then we must redouble our efforts, Evelyn replied, her resolve unwavering. For the sake of Florence, we cannot afford to fail. With a renewed sense of purpose, they set about the task of fortifying the resistance, their every action fueled by the burning desire to preserve the ideals of the Florentine Republic, no matter the cost. Chapter 23. The streets of Florence were alive with the sound of chaos, the clash of steel, the roar of the mob, and the haunting echo of gunfire that reverberated through the city's ancient alleyways. Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves at the heart of the maelstrom, their roles transformed from clandestine supporters to active participants in the desperate struggle for the future of the Florentine Republic. We must reach the Palazzo Vecchio, Evelyn shouted, her voice barely audible over the din of the battle. That is where the fate of Florence will be decided. Mr. Finch's face was grim, but his eyes burned with a steely determination. Then we shall make our way there, my dear, come what may. Together, they weaved through the throngs of protesters and Medici loyalists, their steps guided by a network of resistance fighters who had agreed to provide them safe passage. As they pressed forward, Evelyn couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the uprising, the people's anger and desperation palpable in the air. "The Medici's grip on power is slipping," she murmured, her gaze sweeping across the chaotic scene. "Perhaps, at long last, the people have found the courage to stand against their oppressors." Mr. Finch's expression was somber. "Let us hope that courage is rewarded, my dear, for the cost of failure is unthinkable." They pushed onward, their steps quickening as they caught sight of the towering Palazzo Vecchio, its ancient walls a symbol of Florentine might and resilience. But as they neared their destination, a new threat emerged: the Medici's elite guard, armed to the teeth and determined to crush the rebellion at all costs. Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves caught in the crossfire, their only recourse to take shelter and wait for an opportunity to break through the enemy lines. "We must find a way to the palazzo," Evelyn whispered, her eyes scanning their surroundings for any sign of an opening. "The future of Florence hangs in the balance, and we cannot afford to fail now." Mr. Finch's hand found hers, his grip reassuring, even as the sounds of battle raged around them. "Then we shall forge ahead, my dear, and do whatever it takes to ensure the Florentine Republic endures." With a shared nod of determination, they steeled themselves for the perilous journey that lay ahead, their hearts filled with a burning desire to witness the dawn of a new era for their beloved city. Chapter 24. The roar of the cannon fire echoed through the streets of Florence, the very foundations of the city trembling under the relentless assault of the Medici's forces. Evelyn and Mr. Finch pressed on, their lungs burning with exertion as they darted through the chaos, their only goal to reach the Palazzo Vecchio and join the resistance in its final, desperate stand. "We must hurry, Mr. Finch," Evelyn cried, her voice laced with urgency. "The Medici's grip on the city grows ever tighter, and our allies may not be able to hold out much longer." Her companion's expression was grim, but his steps never faltered. "I am with you, my dear. We shall not be deterred, not when the fate of Florence hangs in the balance." They rounded a corner, only to be confronted by a barrage of enemy fire, the air thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the screams of the wounded. Evelyn and Mr. Finch dove for cover, their hearts racing as they surveyed the battlefield, searching for a path forward. "The Medici's forces have us surrounded," Mr. Finch muttered, his brow furrowed with concern. "We must find another way to reach the palazzo, or all may be lost." Evelyn's mind raced, her gaze darting from one potential escape route to the next. "There," she breathed, her eyes alighting on a narrow alleyway that seemed to offer a glimmer of hope. "If we can make it through there, we may yet have a chance." Without hesitation, they surged forward, their movements swift and decisive as they navigated the treacherous terrain, their every step shadowed by the threat of discovery and death. The sounds of battle grew ever more distant, but the weight of their mission only seemed to intensify, the fate of the Florentine Republic hanging in the balance with each passing moment. As they neared the Palazzo Vecchio, the air grew thick with the scent of smoke and the echoes of a pitched battle, the resistance fighters making their final stand against the Medici's relentless onslaught. Evelyn and Mr. Finch exchanged a charged glance, their eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation and the unwavering determination that had brought them this far. "This is it, my dear," Mr. Finch murmured, his voice barely audible over the din of the conflict. "Whatever happens, know that I am proud to have walked this path by your side." Evelyn's hand found his, their fingers intertwining in a gesture of solidarity and unwavering resolve. "And you, Mr. Finch. Now, let us go and write the final chapter of this struggle for the Florentine Republic." With a shared nod, they surged forward, their steps fueled by the weight of history and the unshakable belief that their actions would shape the future of their beloved city. Chapter 25. The air inside the Palazzo Vecchio was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the desperate cries of the resistance fighters, their numbers dwindling in the face of the Medici's relentless onslaught. Evelyn and Mr. Finch burst through the ornate doors, their eyes sweeping across the chaotic scene, searching for a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. There, Evelyn shouted, her gaze fixing on a group of resistance leaders gathered around a central dais, their faces etched with determination. "We must join them, Mr. Finch, and lend our strength to their cause." Without hesitation, they surged forward, weaving through the throngs of combatants, their every step shadowed by the threat of enemy fire. As they reached the dais, they were greeted by the weary but resolute faces of the Resistance's most prominent figures, their eyes filled with a mixture of relief and trepidation. "You have made it," one of the leaders exclaimed, his voice tinged with both gratitude and concern. "But the Medici's forces are closing in, and our lines are beginning to crumble. We must act, and act quickly, if we are to have any hope of prevailing." Evelyn's gaze swept across the beleaguered defenders, her mind racing with options and contingencies. "Tell us what needs to be done," she replied, her voice steady and resolute. "We are here to do whatever it takes to secure the future of the Florentine Republic." The leader's expression darkened, his eyes reflecting the weight of the decision that lay before them. "We must make a final, desperate stand," he murmured, his voice laced with a grim determination. "Our only chance is to hold the Palazzo Vecchio at all costs, even if it means sacrificing everything we have fought for." Evelyn and Mr. Finch exchanged a charged glance, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily upon them. But even as the thunderous roar of the cannon fire drew ever closer, their resolve remained unshaken. "Then we shall stand with you," Evelyn declared, her voice ringing out with unwavering conviction. "For the sake of Florence, we will not falter, no matter the cost." Mr. Finch's hand found hers, his grip firm and reassuring. "Indeed, my dear, we are in this together, until the very end." With a shared nod, they took up their positions, their weapons at the ready, as the Medici's forces converged upon the Palazzo Vecchio, their objective to crush the last embers of the resistance and secure their ultimate victory. The battle that followed would be remembered as one of the most pivotal moments in Florentine history, a final, desperate struggle for the very soul of the city. Chapter 26. The thunderous roar of the Medici's cannon fire echoed through the ornate halls of the Palazzo Vecchio, the very walls trembling under the relentless assault. Evelyn and Mr. Finch stood side by side, their weapons at the ready, their eyes fixed on the advancing enemy forces with unwavering determination. Around them, the resistance fighters scrambled to reinforce their positions, their faces etched with a grim resolve as they prepared to make their final stand. "They come," one of the leaders shouted, his voice carrying over the din of the battle. "All who are able, take your positions and hold the line." Evelyn and Mr. Finch exchanged a charged glance, their fingers tightening around the grips of their weapons. "This is it, Mr. Finch," Evelyn murmured, her voice barely audible over the deafening roar of the cannon fire. "Whatever happens, know that I am honored to have fought alongside you for the sake of our beloved Florence." Mr. Finch's expression was somber, but his eyes shone with a fierce determination. "And you, my dear. Now, let us show the Medici the true spirit of the Florentine Republic." With a shared nod, they surged forward, their movements swift and decisive as they joined the resistance fighters in their desperate defense of the Palazzo Vecchio. The battle that followed was a brutal and relentless affair, the air thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the anguished cries of the wounded. Evelyn and Mr. Finch fought with a ferocity born of their unwavering commitment to their cause, their weapons cutting down one enemy after another as they refused to be cowed by the Medici's overwhelming numbers. But the Medici's forces were relentless, their superior firepower and sheer weight of numbers slowly pushing the resistance fighters back, inch by agonizing inch. As the sun began to set, casting the beleaguered Palazzo Vecchio in a hazy, reddish glow, it became clear that the resistance was on the verge of collapse. Evelyn and Mr. Finch stood side by side, their clothes tattered and their faces streaked with grime and sweat, but their resolve remained unbroken. "We have fought well, my dear," Mr. Finch murmured, his voice tinged with a bittersweet pride. "But it seems our time has come." Evelyn's hand found his, their fingers intertwining in a gesture of solidarity and unwavering love. "Then let us face the end with the same courage that has carried us this far, Mr. Finch. For Florence and for all that we have fought to defend." As the Medici's forces surged forward, the last rays of the setting sun glinting off their weapons, Evelyn and Mr. Finch braced themselves for the final, desperate confrontation, their hearts filled with the knowledge that they had given their all in the defense of their beloved city. Chapter 27. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the anguished cries of the dying as the Medici's forces finally breached the defenses of the Palazzo Vecchio. Evelyn and Mr. Finch stood shoulder to shoulder, their weapons still clutched in their hands, their faces etched with a mixture of exhaustion and defiance. Around them, the once proud resistance fighters lay scattered, their bodies broken and lifeless, their spirits extinguished in the face of the Medici's relentless assault. "It would seem our last stand has come to an end," Mr. Finch murmured, his voice tinged with a deep sorrow. Evelyn's grip tightened on her weapon, her knuckles turning white. "Then let us make them pay dearly for every inch of ground they have taken," she growled, her eyes narrowing as the Medici's soldiers advanced. The two of them braced themselves, their backs pressed against the ornate walls of the Palazzo Vecchio as the Medici's forces surged forward, their weapons raised and their faces twisted with the thirst for vengeance. In the ensuing melee, Evelyn and Mr. Finch fought with a desperate ferocity, their weapons carving a path through the enemy ranks as they refused to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. But the Medici's soldiers were relentless, their numbers swelling with each passing moment, and slowly, inexorably, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves being pushed back, their strength and ammunition dwindling. As the battle raged on, Evelyn caught a glimpse of a familiar face amidst the chaos, the cold, calculating gaze of Cosimo de' Medici himself, his expression a mask of triumph as he surveyed the devastation that his forces had wrought. Evelyn's heart burned with a white-hot fury, and she redoubled her efforts, her weapon unleashing a barrage of fire that thinned the Medici's ranks, if only for a moment. But it was not enough, and as the sun began to set, casting the Palazzo Vecchio in a hazy, reddish glow, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves surrounded, their backs pressed against the wall, their weapons empty and their bodies battered and bruised. "It would seem this is the end, my dear," Mr. Finch murmured, his voice tinged with a bittersweet resignation. Evelyn's eyes met his, and in that moment, she knew that they had given everything they had in the defense of their beloved Florence. "So be it," she replied, her voice steady and resolute. "But let us face the end with the same courage that has carried us this far." As the Medici's soldiers closed in, their weapons raised and their faces twisted with triumph, Evelyn and Mr. Finch steeled themselves for the final confrontation, their hearts filled with the knowledge that they had done all that they could to defend the ideals they held so dear. Chapter 28. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the stifling silence that followed the final moments of the battle. Evelyn and Mr. Finch lay sprawled on the floor of the Palazzo Vecchio, their bodies broken and battered, their weapons discarded at their sides. Around them, the once proud resistance fighters lay in silent repose, their eyes staring sightlessly at the ornate ceiling above. The Medici's soldiers stood over them, their weapons still raised, their faces twisted with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. Cosimo de' Medici stepped forward, his eyes glinting with a cold, calculating gaze as he surveyed the scene. "So, the last remnants of the Florentine Republic have been vanquished," he murmured, his voice dripping with a mocking triumph. "You have fought well, but in the end, your cause was doomed to fail." Evelyn mustered the last of her strength, her eyes burning with a defiant fire. "The Florentine Republic may have fallen, Cosimo, but the ideals for which we fought will never be extinguished," she spat, her voice ragged and hoarse. Cosimo's lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. "Ideals? Bah! Such lofty notions are the refuge of the weak and the foolish. In this world, it is power that prevails, and the Medici are the masters of that power." He turned to his soldiers, his expression hardening. "Take these fools and dispose of them. Their worthless lives have no place in the new Medici order." As the soldiers advanced, their weapons raised, Evelyn's eyes sought out Mr. Finch's, and in that moment, a lifetime of shared experiences and unwavering devotion passed between them. "Farewell, my dear," Mr. Finch murmured, his voice barely audible. "Know that I have no regrets, for I have fought alongside the most courageous and noble soul I have ever known." Evelyn's hand found his, their fingers intertwining in a final, desperate gesture of love and solidarity. "And I, you, my dearest," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "May our spirits find peace, and may the Florentine Republic live on in the hearts of those who cherish freedom and justice." As the Medici's soldiers raised their weapons, Evelyn and Mr. Finch closed their eyes, their hearts filled with a profound sense of resignation and, ultimately, acceptance. The last sound they heard was the thunderous roar of gunfire, and then, the world faded to black. Chapter 29: A New Hope. As the smoke cleared and the sounds of battle subsided, a hush fell over the Palazzo Vecchio. Amidst the devastation, a single figure stirred. Evelyn, battered but unbowed, her eyes alight with a renewed determination. Slowly, painfully, she pulled herself to her feet, her gaze sweeping across the room. To her wonder and amazement, she found Mr. Finch stirring as well, his face etched with disbelief. You're alive," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn rushed to his side, kneeling beside him, her hands trembling as she checked his wounds. "So are you, my dear friend. I thought." Her voice trailed off, the weight of their shared ordeal bearing down on her. Mr. Finch reached up, his fingers gently tracing the contours of her face. "I'm here, Evelyn. We're both here." A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Against all odds, it would seem. As they embraced, a glimmer of hope flickered to life within their hearts. The Medici's victory was not as complete as they had thought. The spirit of the Florentine Republic still burned, though battered and bruised. In the distance, the sound of voices reached their ears, not the triumphant shouts of the Medici's soldiers, but the muted murmurs of the city's citizens gathering in the streets, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Evelyn and Mr. Finch exchanged a knowing glance, their battered bodies protesting, but their resolve unbroken. "The fight is not over," Evelyn said, her voice infused with a newfound strength. "The people of Florence have not given up, and neither shall we." Mr. Finch nodded, his own spirit rising to meet the challenge. "Then let us rise, my dear, and lead them once more, for the sake of the Florentine Republic and all that it represents." Together they stood, their wounds forgotten, their eyes fixed on the horizon. A glimmer of hope had been kindled, and they would fan its flames until the Medici's grip on the city was finally broken. Chapter 30. The Resistance Rises. In the days that followed the Medici's violent suppression of the resistance in the Palazzo Vecchio, a renewed spirit of defiance began to stir among the people of Florence. Evelyn and Mr. Finch, their wounds slowly healing, found themselves at the center of this nascent movement. They moved quietly through the city's winding streets, meeting with trusted allies, rallying the disheartened and the disillusioned. The Medici may have won this battle, Evelyn would say, her voice soft but unwavering, but the war for the soul of Florence is far from over. The ideals of the Republic still burn in our hearts, and we will not rest until they are once again realized. Her words, simple yet powerful, struck a chord with the people. One by one, those who had once cowered in fear began to step forward, offering their skills, their resources, and their lives to the cause. Craftsmen and scholars, merchants and laborers, all united under the banner of the Florentine Republic, determined to reclaim their city from the Medici's oppressive grasp. Mr. Finch, his strategic mind honed by years of planning and execution, set about organizing the burgeoning resistance. He mapped out safe houses, established communication networks, and trained a new generation of fighters, instilling in them the same sense of duty and sacrifice that had driven him and Evelyn. As the weeks turned into months, the Medici's grip on Florence began to loosen. Sabotage and subterfuge, ambushes and assassinations, the resistance struck swift and sure, delivering blow after blow to the regime's infrastructure and morale. Cosimo de' Medici, once so confident in his triumph, found himself increasingly unnerved by the tenacity and resourcefulness of his foes. His once vaunted security forces struggled to contain the growing unrest, their ranks thinned by desertions and defections. And at the heart of it all, Evelyn and Mr. Finch remained steadfast, their bond of friendship and shared purpose only growing stronger with each passing day. "We will see this through, my dear," Mr. Finch would say, his eyes alight with a fierce determination. "For the sake of Florence and all that we hold dear." Evelyn would nod, her own resolve steeled by the knowledge that their cause was just and their fight was far from over. "Yes, my friend," she would reply, her voice filled with unwavering conviction. "We will see it through, no matter the cost." Chapter 31. The Battle for Florence. As the resistance movement gained momentum, the Medici's grip on Florence began to loosen. Cosimo, once confident in his triumph, grew increasingly unnerved by the tenacity and resourcefulness of his foes. Evelyn and Mr. Finch, at the heart of the resistance, coordinated a series of strategic strikes against the Medici's strongholds and supply lines. Sabotage, subterfuge, and selective assassinations eroded the regime's infrastructure and morale. The streets of Florence became a battlefield, with the citizens caught in the crossfire. Evelyn and Mr. Finch worked tirelessly to minimize civilian casualties, often placing themselves in harm's way to shield the innocent. "We fight for the soul of our city," Evelyn would declare, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will not let the Medici's tyranny extinguish the flame of the Florentine Republic." Mr. Finch, his strategic mind honed by years of planning and execution, orchestrated a series of coordinated strikes that gradually weakened the Medici's grip. Safe houses, communication networks, and a growing contingent of trained fighters allowed the resistance to strike swiftly and decisively, then melt back into the shadows. As the conflict raged on, Cosimo de' Medici grew increasingly desperate, ordering his forces to crack down on the populace with ever greater brutality. But the people of Florence, inspired by the resistance's unwavering spirit, refused to be cowed. In the darkest hours, when hope seemed to dim, Evelyn and Mr. Finch would rally the people, reminding them of the values they fought for: freedom, justice, and the inalienable rights of all citizens. "We stand on the precipice of a new dawn," Mr. Finch would say, his voice carrying across the crowded piazzas. "The Medici's reign of terror will not last. Florence will be reborn, stronger and more resolute than ever before." Evelyn, standing beside him, would nod in agreement, her eyes shining with determination. "We will not surrender. Not now. Not ever. For this is our city, our home, and we will defend it with every ounce of our being." The people, galvanized by their words, would take up the cry, their voices joining in a chorus of defiance that echoed through the streets of Florence. The battle for the city's future had reached a critical juncture, and Evelyn and Mr. Finch knew that the outcome would determine the fate of the Florentine Republic for generations to come. Chapter 32. The final confrontation. As the resistance movement gained strength, the confrontation between the Medici and the people of Florence reached a fever pitch. Cosimo, sensing the tide turning against him, ordered his forces to mount a decisive offensive to crush the rebellion once and for all. Evelyn and Mr. Finch, at the heart of the resistance, knew that this would be the final, decisive battle for the fate of their beloved city. They rallied their forces, ensuring that every safe house, every communication network, and every trained fighter was ready for the onslaught. The battle raged for days, with both sides fighting with a ferocity born of desperation. The streets of Florence ran red with blood as the Medici's soldiers clashed with the determined citizens, fueled by their dreams of freedom and self-governance. Evelyn and Mr. Finch were at the forefront of the fight, their weapons at the ready, their movements swift and precise. They inspired their comrades with their unwavering courage, their refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. As the battle reached its climax, Evelyn and Mr. Finch found themselves facing off against Cosimo de' Medici himself, the once powerful ruler now a cornered and desperate man. "This ends today, Medici," Evelyn spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "Your tyranny has cost us too much, and we will not rest until you and your family are removed from power forever." Cosimo, his face twisted with rage, drew his sword, his movements frantic and uncoordinated. "You will all die here, rot in the shadows, and be forgotten," he snarled. Mr. Finch stepped forward, his own blade held high. "No, Cosimo, it is you who will be forgotten. Your legacy will be one of oppression and cruelty, while the Florentine Republic will rise again, stronger and more vibrant than ever before." The two men clashed, their blades ringing out in the chaos of the battle. Evelyn, seeing an opening, moved in, her own sword finding its mark and sending Cosimo crumpling to the ground, his life slipping away. As the Medici forces, deprived of their leader, began to falter and retreat, the citizens of Florence erupted into cheers and celebrations. The Florentine Republic had been reborn, its people reclaiming their rightful place as the masters of their own destiny. Evelyn and Mr. Finch, their clothes tattered and their bodies weary, embraced in the midst of the joyous crowd, their eyes shining with pride and relief. "It's over, my friend," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We've done it. Florence is free." Mr. Finch nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Yes, Evelyn. The future of our beloved city now rests in our hands. And I know, with you by my side, we will build a new era of prosperity and justice for all." As the sun set over the newly liberated Florence, the people celebrated, their spirits soaring with the knowledge that they had reclaimed their rightful place in the world. And at the heart of it all, Evelyn and Mr. Finch stood as beacons of hope, their friendship and unwavering commitment to the Florentine Republic serving as a guiding light for generations to come. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more exciting story like this. Until the next story.